All right, Shalom Bracha, ladies. I know this has been a very difficult day, and it should be a difficult day for all of us. You know, there's the story of Elisha Hanavi, who was very appreciative of the great chesed that Isha Shunamit showed towards him, her hospitality, and he really wants to give something back to her, do something for her, in appreciation of what all she did for Elisha. And her response to Elisha was, all I want is B'toch Ami Anochi Yoshavet. I just want to be among my people. And that is really what defines Yom Haatzmaut in Eretz Yisrael. The sense of being with Am Yisrael. All of Am Yisrael is together, is united tonight in mourning and united tonight in celebration. For all of us benefit from the great sacrifices of the Kadoshim, of the Chayim and Chayalot, who have given their lives for us to be able to come here, to be here, and to learn from Rabbi Gold. Tonight, there is no greater way that we could think of to help us make that difficult transition from Yom HaZikaron to Yom Haatzmaut, me'afela le'ora, mishibu le'geula, me'evel le'yom tov, than have Rabbi Gold, who has seen much more of the Nisim, the Niflot, that have happened here in the last 60 years or so, than we have. And he will give us some perspective that I'm sure that we did not have before today. Now, Rabbi Gold asked me not to speak too much about him. There's lots to say, I guess, because that will take away from from his time here, and that will be chabal for you. So I'll try to be brief. But I just want to mention the amazing connection that Rabbi Gold has to Tiferet. So Rabbi Gold, back at 1951, was it? Came to Toronto? 59, sorry, 59.
That's okay.
No, 1959, Rabbi Gold came and was one of the founders of the yeshiva that my brother-in-laws went to, Medinat Yisrael yeshiva in Toronto. And as well as the shul, which you'll see on the memorial plaque in the back of the Beit Midrash, the shul B'nai Torah, from which I come from, Mrs. Rosner comes from, and Rav Gold's son-in-law, Rav Goldreich, sitting in the back with his wife, also is from. And I was only an infant when Rabbi Gold left to Hempstead, right? To Hempstead. But for years afterward, I would always hear from my father, but no one gives a shir like Rabbi Gold. No one gives the rabbi speech like Rabbi Gold, right? And Baruch Hashem, I came to Eretz Yisrael and had the zechut of hearing Rabbi Gold when he was speaking in my shul in Ahavat Zion here in Rabbi Shemesh, and I was like, wow, now I know what my parents were talking about. Unbelievable inspiration, unbelievable power to feel the Nisim Niflot just coming out of Rabbi Gold as he experienced them is really so amazing. To make what we're celebrating tomorrow, what we're commemorating today, to make it much more tangible for us. And of course, this is the place where Rabbi Gold almost has a second home. He has a shul Kehila in Har Nof, also the learning program, the OU Israel Center. But besides spreading Torah all over the world, he's spreading Torah through his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Baruch Hashem, here in Rabbi Shemesh. So his daughter and his son and his grandchildren living here in Rabbi Shemesh. So the connection is not just with the Toronto connection, the B'nai Torah connection, but as well the Rabbi Shemesh connection as well. And we're very proud for several years already to have Rabbi Gold come and to speak to us and help us really understand what this day is about. And very excited also because this is right before the release of his book, Touching History, the biography. Oh, I'm not supposed to introduce it yet? It's okay. Of Rabbi Gold, and I'm very excited to get my hands on and read it. So without further ado, we are privileged and honored to have with us Rabbi Shalom Gold.
Thank you very much. I have to say, your students are very polite, very well behaved. If I would drink all the water that they wanted to bring me and all the ragalach, but everybody was concerned. Can I do something for you? It's wonderful. It's refreshing. It's beautiful. All right. So yes, I'm going to take some selections from this book that was published about a month ago, 2 months ago, called Touching History. Now, you may not recognize the bridge, and you may not recognize this piece of land down here. This is the Williamsburg Bridge. Now, the Williamsburg Bridge goes from Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, to the east side. I was born in Williamsburg a long time ago. And here, this is Harnof. So the book is the journey that I made from Williamsburg to Jerusalem. I don't think I'll give you more than 5 shekel worth of the stories in the book, but those that are relevant for us here. There's something so precious about youth, but youth also has a disadvantage, and the disadvantage of youth is precisely its advantage. You're young, which means, of course, that your life's experiences are limited. There's an advantage to being, let's see, what should we call it? Not old. Grown up. There's an advantage to being grown up because there are experiences that we grown-ups have had in our lives that it's very important that we share with you. So I'm going to try and do that. You'll see in a moment how important historic perspective is when you want to understand an event. My book begins with a story that I write has pursued me for many, many years. It's a story that I read in a book called The Battle for Jerusalem by Abraham Rabinovich. It's the story of the 6-Day War. None of you were born then, right?
Nope, wasn't born.
It's a story of the 6-Day War. It was a stunning victory. But in order to appreciate that stunning victory, a world and a Jewish people that thought that the state of Israel is coming to an end, surrounded by enemies from all sides, cut off from the entire world, all planes, boats, everything stopped coming. Only El Al was the connection between the Jewish state and the rest of the world. And the noose kept tightening around the country, cut off from everything, nobody to turn to. In Cairo and in Damascus, the crowds, millions were crying, "Death to the Jews." We were frightened, we were terrified. World Jewry was frightened. What's going to be to this young fledgling state? One of the nice stories I like, that's a Toronto story. Oh yeah, I love that story. What could Jews do? We were in Toronto, what could we do at the time? So people, you know what Jews in Chutz La'aretz do, they give money. They give money. People were pouring out money to the state for whatever they may need. And there was a fellow who walked into his local bank in Toronto and says he wants a loan. The manager asks him, "Well, what do you need the loan for?" So he says, "I want to give money to Israel." we don't give loans for money to Israel. You know, we give loans if you want to buy a home, if you want to improve your home. That's what we give loans for. So he says, "You know, I'd like a home improvement loan." And the bank manager gave him the loan. Eretz Yisrael was the home of Klal Yisrael. And he wanted to make sure that that home is going to continue being improved. So I'm telling you this story about the 6-Day War because it was on the 4th day of the 6-Day War. And incidentally, on the 4th day of the 6-Day War, they didn't yet know that it was the 6-Day War. You got that? That was a Wednesday. And During the early hours of the morning, the Israeli paratroopers broke into the old city. You know what it means, the old city? The old city of Jerusalem was held by Jordan. Jews couldn't go to the Kotel. The young who had grown up in Israel from 1948 to 1967 had no idea where the Kotel was. And here it is, these young paratroopers, 19, 20 years old, they come rushing into the city, and their goal is to get to the Kotel and Har HaBayit. And they don't know the way. And then in an alleyway, they see a frightened young man. They approach him. They assure him they're not going to hurt him. All they want is just show us the way to the Kotel. And he points the way for them. And he remains standing there, transfixed. And he watches Israeli soldiers rushing up to the Har HaBayit. He's standing there and he watches the Israeli flag going up on the Temple Mount. For more than 2,000 years, Yerushalayim did not belong to the Jewish people. Every people on the face of this earth wanted it. 86 battles were fought over Yerushalayim, more than any other city in the whole world. And here it is on that Wednesday morning, day 4. Israeli soldiers are hoisting the flag of Israel over the Temple Mount. And then, of course, there was the great call that went out by the commander-in-chief of their forces, Har HaBayit B'Yadeinu, the Temple Mount is in our hands, Har HaBayit B'Yadeinu, the Temple Mount. And this young fellow is watching. Who was this young fellow? His name was Abdullah Schleifer. Listen carefully. He was a New York-born Jew. A New York-born Jew who had converted to Islam, married a Jordanian girl, was working in the old city of Jerusalem for a newspaper. And Abraham Rabinovich writes, what a strange witness to one of the greatest moments in all of Jewish history. This poor Abdullah Schleifer is watching the most awesome moment in Jewish history in 2,000 years. He can't appreciate it. He doesn't understand it. It has no meaning to him. It's not significant at all. He knows that something's happening, but he can't understand it. He can't grasp it. Because Abdullah Schleifer has cut himself off from his past. He has no past. And one who doesn't have a past is absolutely incapable of appreciating the present. If you don't know the past, you can't appreciate it. We senior citizens, thank God, we know the past. The mitzvah for you is to learn about the past so that you can appreciate everything that's happening here. And it's a mitzvah. Zechor yemot olam binu shno dor vador. Remember that which happened in yesteryear. Study and understand what is happening from generation to generation. You can't understand a thing now if you don't know what preceded it. You've been born into a world in which it was taken for granted that there's a state of Israel. Any Jew in the world wants a place to go. There it is, he has it. It wasn't always like that. For 2,000 years it wasn't like that. Jews were battered from pillar to post, expelled from one country to the next country. And then, of course, ending with the profoundest tragedy in all of history, not only Jewish history, in all of history, the Shoah. Poor Abdullah Schleifer. He just don't get it because he has no past. What troubled me about the story is, as I kept thinking of it over and over again, I came to a conclusion. Unfortunately, there are a lot of Abdullah Schleifers walking around. A lot of people, Jews, who don't have a clue. They don't know what was here 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago. They have very little grasp of Jewish histories, so they have absolutely no way to appreciate what's taking place before their very eyes. If you know Jewish history, certainly the biggest mitzvah is to know the Jewish history of the last 70 years. That's a shtick history that is so powerful, unmatched and unparalleled in all of world history. To emerge broken, beaten, impoverished, weak, dying from Auschwitz, then 3 years later, 3 years later, a Jewish state comes into being. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I don't know, just a few days ago, I finally decided that I think, regardless of all the complaints, having made Yom HaShoah a week before Yom Haatzmaut was an act of pure brilliance. So there it is, you have it. A week ago, we, if you were reading the papers, if you were listening to the radio, if you were watching TV, almost hardly did none of them, but you certainly heard a lot about the Shoah. And a week later, you're celebrating Yom Haatzmaut. It puts it in such powerful relief, one next to the other. The past is the key that unlocks the present. Without the past, you can't appreciate a thing, not a thing. I'll give you a classic example. As far as I'm concerned, personally, a few weeks ago, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke before both houses of Congress. He was being attacked from all sides. From all sides, he was being attacked. He's pulling politics just before an election. He has no business talking over there. Stay out of America's business. You're starting up with Obama. Everybody was just down on him. You can, from every part of the spectrum, from the religious to the secular, right, left, poor Netanyahu. I watched Netanyahu speaking, and I'm not embarrassed anymore. I'm not embarrassed anymore. I can tell you, I burst into tears. I look like a tough guy. I once was. I'm not tough anymore. I burst into tears. Why did I burst into tears? I'll tell you exactly what I was thinking about while I'm watching Netanyahu speaking before both houses of Congress and getting applause that was genuine all the way. And even the greatest applause he got was when he made the statement that you have to remember, everybody, in the final analysis of the state of Israel is going to have to go it alone against Iran. That's exactly what we're going to do. When I heard the sentence, he got a standing ovation greater than that at any other point. I'm thinking about something else. While he's speaking, you know what I'm thinking about? October 6th, 1943. I know you don't know what happened on October 6, 1943. That's why I'm here. I'm going to tell you what happened. October 6, 1943 was 3 days before Yom Kippur. It was only toward August and November. My daughter takes care of me. In August and November of 1942, the first reports were coming out of Europe that something terrible is happening there. Mass slaughter of the Jews. They didn't know yet that this was a plan to destroy all of Europe's Jews. It took toward the end of 42 and the beginning of 43. When word started reaching the world about crematoria, about gas chambers, the world was horrified. But you know what? They remained silent. The world remained silent. It was a few months later, 3 days before Yom Kippur, in 1943, 400 rabbanim, 400 rabbis came to Washington. If you'll ever Google the rabbis' march to Washington, you'll see 400 rabbanim coming out of Union Station, and they begin to march toward the White House. We're talking about the first demonstration of Jews. And the purpose of the demonstration was to beg the President of the United States to do something to save European Jewry. Most of them were European-born rabbis. The rabbi who read the proclamation and the request had a heavily accented English. The generations of American-born, English-speaking rabbis had not yet appeared upon the face of the United States. Rabbi Feinstein was there. Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik was there. Rabbi Lezer Silver of Cincinnati. The Bostoner Rebbe, young man, was also there. 400 rabbis. Roosevelt, President of the United States, refused to meet with them. He got out of the White House through a back door. 400 of the greatest rabbis in America have come to Washington, and the president won't talk to them. And I'm watching a prime minister of an independent state of Israel standing and speaking before both houses of Congress, and the whole world is listening to him. Is that an unbelievable difference? Is that a difference in the stature and the place of the Jewish people in the world? The American government was asked to bomb the rail lines to Auschwitz. And as somebody described, I have my briefcase here. It's here. Okay. The historian described the response of the American State Department to the request that the rail lines to Auschwitz be destroyed. So an unbelievable response. Oh, do I have it here? Oh yeah. Here, one paragraph. A fellow by the name of John J. McCloy, who was the Assistant Secretary of the Army, sent a reply to all those who were asking that America bomb the rail lines to Auschwitz. He says the following: after a study, it became apparent that such an operation could be executed only by diversion of considerable air support essential to the success of our forces now engaged in decisive operations elsewhere, and would in any case be of such doubtful efficacy that it would not warrant the use of our resources. We just, no, nothing can be accomplished. Then comes the great sentence that will live in infamy until the end of time. There has been considerable opinion to the effect that such an effort, bombing the rail lines, even if practicable, might provoke more vindictive action by the Germans. What can they do worse? It will provoke more vindictive action by the Germans. What more can they do? What more vindictive action than Auschwitz was possible remained the secret of the War Department. 1943, there wasn't a Jewish voice that was heard in the world. Not a one. 2015, a whole world is listening to what's being said by a Jew from Yerushalayim, what's being said by a Jew standing in Congress. And not only listening to what he's saying, a world knows that Jew in Yerushalayim has the power of a state behind him, and he can get up before the world and say, if you're not going to take care of the problem, we will deal with it. And the world knows that we can do this. Unbelievable. What a difference has taken place. This is all the work of God and man. It could not have happened any other way. There is no other people on the face of this earth that ever went from the ashes of destruction to becoming a world power. Do you know that up until a few months ago, the Israeli Air Force was considered only the fourth most powerful in the world, after America, Russia, and China. About a month or 6 weeks ago, there was a report that in some circles they are beginning to feel that Israel is now the mightiest air force in the world. For heaven's sake, I would tell that to my Zayda. My Zayda, Rabbi Shalom, who died about 2 months after the establishment of the state, he said, Mishiki Bisti, you're crazy. We have an air force, we have an army. We're one of those powerful fighting forces in the world, one of the smallest countries in the world. What's taking place over here is absolutely miraculous. And here is a country, 2,000 years, nothing grew in this country. And now, Google it, you know, you sit around over there, Google, Israel agriculture. You all know what hit you when you read Israel agriculture. A country that didn't really produce anything for 2,000 years is a superpower agriculturally, for heaven's sake, and there are no more than 2,000 dunams of land that are arable in this country. You got to read it, because I'll kill it if I'll try to hear. But one thing I can tell you, I just now told it to the taxi driver over here. I mean, he nearly lost control of the car. I should watch what I tell people. Israeli cows, you know, moo, what they call LC in America. Israeli cows give more milk than any other cow in the world. All the Verschlugene Goyish cows, and they list, gives more milk than America, European Union, Japan, and Australian cows. They give more milk. How do you like that? You see a cow over here when you're going on the road, you have derech eretz. Then I find out from somebody else, or from my wife. My wife tells me she was taking a course to become a mashgichat kashrut. How do you like that? Meanwhile, she's just a mashgichat kashrut in my kitchen at home. That's it. But she took this course, and the rabbi who was the rabbi of Tnuva is the largest dairy company in the country. So he says, not only that, the only cows in the world that have to be milked 3 times a day, you guessed it, not LC, but I don't know, Chayala, Sugala, whatever we're going to call her, the Jewish cow has to be milked 3 times a day. So I remember exclaiming in the house to my wife, Vey, Eretz Savas Chalav, Udavash. And truth is, I never understood it. God gave the title. He described his land as a land flowing with milk and honey. What, there's no milk and honey in Canada? There's no milk and honey in America? Every country in the world has milk and honey. Until I heard this about our good Jewish cows. I found out that when the Rabbi Shalom called it Eretz Zavas Cholov, he meant that the cholov in this country, the milk in this country is going to be unusual. It's going to be exceptional. It's going to be different than any other milk in the world. You will never be able to say about any other country that it's flowing with milk, as you say about this little Eretz Yisrael over here. But I had a problem with tvash. I had a problem with honey, and it didn't last long. A few days after I said this, I saw an article in Jerusalem Post where they had a picture of a date tree. The dvash in the pasuk is dates. Dvash from dates, honey from dates. They had an item in the paper that Israel has produced or grown the largest date in the world, 10 centimeters long. So it therefore means that the dvash of this country is also unusual and exceptional. It's God's land. But here, let's get back to our history. Without an understanding, without a knowledge of the past, there's really no way to understand what's happening here, the awesomeness of it all. And unfortunately, there are people, Abdullah Schleifers, remember him? We were talking about him at the beginning. Somebody can be a Frumeyid, a Ben Torah, a Talmud Chacham, and historically he's an Abdullah Schleifer. That's the tragedy. Medina, Hallel, Shmalel, God, give me a break. They don't get it. They simply don't get it. They don't get what we owe to Rabbi Shalom, what he's done for us here. Unparalleled and unmatched, unparalleled and unmatched in all history. So that's klal number one. Klal number one is we have to be very, very grateful for everything that Rabbi Shalom has done for us here. It's unbelievable. And you keep reading, if you don't read the papers, but if you read, nearly every day there's another item about something that has been discovered or invented here that is of global significance. There are medicines that have been developed here that are used worldwide. Methods of agriculture are taught by this country worldwide. Science, technology, you name it. There's so much going on over here. Every day in the paper. The whole country, I still don't understand it. This drones business, these unmanned, Israel's is the one that's wanted more than, everybody in the world wants Israel's drones. Before I came here, I was reading, they have articles today in the papers about back there, the 40s, the 50s. So they have an article about the Uzi, the submachine gun. That was a major accomplishment. Israel became famous in the world of armaments by the Uzi. And who had more to do with it than anybody else? Ronald Reagan. Remember you had a president, Ronald Reagan? You must have, we were all born after Ronald Reagan was president, right? So there was an attempt on his life, an assassination attempt. And there's a famous picture of one of his bodyguards pulling out an Uzi, ready to protect the President of the United States with an Israeli gun. It then became, of course, the gun for the mafia, the underworld, terrorists, etc. But that's the way it is with everything. They're good when used in the right way, and not so good when not used in the right way. The present is unintelligible without the past. Without the past. One of the stories that I bring in this great book, by the way, it's going to be on sale here. Great present to bring home. You're going home in a few weeks? God, I think every one of you should go with at least 3 copies of for your parents, for your grandparents, and okay. One of the stories, it's just me, the big tough guy, not so tough. About 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and I went, I had resisted it, but then finally she got me to go on one of these tours to Europe of Jewish history. Went to Vilna, Slobodka, Panovich, Warsaw, Lizensk, Lublin, Majdanek, the concentration camp. Anyway, the end of that trip was a mess. I can't describe all of the things that went wrong. We arrived in Vienna. We were supposed to get a connection to take us back to Eretz Yisrael. Because of a storm, we came too late, so we missed it. I'm not going to bore you with all of the miserable details. 48 hours we ended up in the airport in Vienna. The things that went on over there, I tell you, wiped out. It was terrible. And it's Friday morning now. We ended up in Vienna on Wednesday. It's Friday morning. And we desperately want to get home for Shabbos. Austrian Airlines said, we're not responsible. Too bad. Boy, they paid for it pretty well afterwards. We were on our own. Oh, what happened with all the people on the plane? They were all Jews. We were all part of a big group. Some of them, it was crazy. Everybody was running through the airport. A few found a flight to Warsaw that would get them a plane back to Eretz Yisrael. Others went to Bucharest. My wife and I, we ended up there in Vienna. And more than anything else, we wanted to get home to Eretz Yisrael for Shabbos. And there was one El Al flight that was yet to leave at 12 o'clock on Friday. And they said they don't know, we'll see what we can do, we'll try and get you on, we can't promise, you're just going to have to wait. And I'm a nervous wreck. My wife, Les, she can take these things a little more. She puts up with me, so she can put up with something like that. Anyway, it was very bad. It was very bad. The plane announced the plane is leaving, and there, a woman, puts 2 tickets to El Al flight going to Eretz Yisrael. I couldn't believe it. I said to my wife, "Come, let's go. We're on the plane." We came in. Now, the front of the plane was the business section. So we come running in with our, and we could walk through business. We come down toward the middle of the economy class, the lower class. And we look at our tickets. No, we passed our seat. So we start going back. And we come to the end of economy. Then suddenly it dawns on me, they put us in business class. We schleppers who didn't have a plane are on business class. After 48 hours in the airport, eyes gemutzet, we're exhausted and fatigued. I plunked down, the 2 of us plunked down in those gorgeous seats. And you know what I did? Big tough guy. I started crying. You know why? Because there's one picture that is so engraved on my mind and on my heart. I see the picture and I start crying. The picture was taken most probably sometime in 1946. Following the Shoah, 1/2 to 3/4 million Jews still remained in the same concentration camps that were now called displaced person camps. They have no place where to go. There's a great story in one of the concentration camps. The day of the liberation, I think the American forces lined up everybody, and the commander started asking, how do you feel? Wonderful. Yeah, great, terrific, we're happy. And then there was a Jew there. Yes, what about you? So he says, this is the saddest day of my life. The day of liberation is the saddest day of your life? What are you talking about? All of these people here have somewhere where to go. I have no place to go. I can't go home. There is no home anymore. Where am I going to go? So you know what Jews did? They started walking across Europe to get to the Mediterranean in the hope that they might get onto some unseaworthy boat that might be able to get through the British blockade and make it to Eretz Yisrael. More than anything else, there were 3/4 million Jews that wanted to go home. They wanted to go home. And there's a picture, the picture is a picture of a long line of Jewish refugees trudging in the snow across the Alps. Trudging in the snow, barely clothed, in the hope that they might yet be able to get to the Mediterranean, might yet get on a boat to go to Eretz Yisrael. And I'm thinking to myself, I wanted to get home for Shabbos, and I was so upset that I couldn't get home for Shabbos. And you know how I go home for Shabbos? Not in an unseaworthy boat. I get plunked down in a plush seat, in business class. Hello! What a difference. What a difference. That picture, it's a black and white picture. So therefore the snow, the white snow, and the dark clothed people trudging, you see the snow coming up to here. Think of that next time you complain about an El Al flight that instead of 9 3/4 hours from New York, it took 15 minutes longer. And the food was really not what you expected, and the movie was rotten. Don't complain, don't complain. Jews walked across Europe in order to come home. So we've, I think most probably one of the most beloved stories in this book, and I just met somebody at my fruit and vegetable store this morning who said, oh, that story. I'll tell you that story because that story could be very important to you. In November of 1981, I had to make a decision whether we're going on Aliyah. We had spent the year before on sabbatical here, and I was offered a job. And here I am, the rabbi of the Young Israel of West Hempstead, one of the finest communities in the world. And we have 3 representatives here from the Young Israel, 2 from Wall, 2 from Maple Street, and 1 from Evergreen. Anybody here from Toronto? Where? Thornhill? Mm-hmm. You're a 905er.
I am.
What street do you live on?
Arnold.
Arnold. Oh, you live a block away from my brother-in-law, Mendel Rubinoff. Well, you better go to 109 Tangerine when you get there. Yeah, go ahead.
Clanton Park.
Clanton Park. What street?
On Banton. It's off of Clanton.
Which one?
Banton.
Oh,
It's off of Clanton Park.
all right. And where do you daven?
Clanton.
At the Clanton Park Synagogue? Wonderful. Okay. Anyway, here it is. It's middle of November 1982. We had been on sabbatical the year before, and I'm offered this job, and I have to give an answer the next day. I have to give an answer. It was the most difficult decision I ever had to make in my life. You can tell them back there in West Hempstead, because I loved West Hempstead so much. You'll tell them? I mean it. I loved West Hempstead. You like West Hempstead too. Well, everybody, we all liked West Hempstead. Which of course made the challenge of the decision to go on Aliyah, made it that much more difficult. Go leave this beautiful community. Oh, every year, I remember I used to give a drosha every year, spring in West Hempstead. When all the flowers started coming out, it was unbelievable. Anyway, I have to make the decision, and I can't make the decision. Now, there had been a family that lived about 5, 6 houses up, who a few years earlier had gone on Aliyah. They were a family of Bali Tshuva. They had gone on Aliyah, and I remember asking this fellow, why are you going? So he says, listen, Rabbi, I've been here a number of years in this community. I'm listening to the reading of the Torah, and you know what? Every parsha in Torah talks about Eretz Yisrael. So what am I doing here? So I'm going. They had a dog, a collie called Charlie. They left Charlie behind with another family on the block. Charlie was a very unhappy dog. But Charlie had one friend left, the rabbi. We used to meet at night. I'd go out for a walk to think about a shir, a drasha, and Charlie's parents would be taking him for a walk. Charlie would see me. He'd come running. He'd put his nozzle on the hair that I have to wash and clean my suit afterwards. But he was a lovely, lovely, nice dog. And me and Charlie, we understood each other. Charlie understood what a rav is and the kind of respect is supposed to have for a rav. Anyway, here comes the night that I have to make the decision, am I going to go on Aliyah or not? And as usual, I go out for my walk, but this time the walk has a purpose. I have to make the decision. I can't come back in the house without a decision. I have to notify Eretz Yisrael. V'hinei, behold, Charlie. Charlie comes running over. I pat him. You know, I should have done what I do with my grandchildren, you know. Wipe their nose. His nose was always drooping. And then Charlie's adoptive mother says to me, Rabbi, you won't believe it. We got a call today from Israel. They bought a ticket for Charlie. Charlie is going on Aliyah. I said, if that fashluggeted dog is going on Aliyah, I'm going. I walked back into the house and I told my family, we're going on Aliyah. If there's a heaven for dogs, there's no question about it, Charlie. All of our Shalom is there. Charlie, there's no question about it. Charlie was sent at the right time by the Rabbi Shalom. God is sending messages to the Jewish people all over the world. Thank God if the message you get is a dog like Charlie. The message could be in another way, the way European Jewry is getting the message. That's not as pleasant as getting it from Charlie. We made this decision and we came on Aliyah. Everybody in their own lives, there are all sorts of messages. God is saying there's a bat kol that comes from Har Chorev. Oilo l'Rebbeinu Shem, that his children are not with him in his land. He's sending the message all the time. So all we have to do is we have to be tuned in, we have to be awake, we have to be open, we have to get the message, we have to get it. And one way to begin to get it is by a knowledge of the past, at least the last 70 to 75 years. Awesome years. No other nation ever experienced anything like it. And we continue to be the beneficiaries of God's abundance. He is blessing this country. And I believe, no doubt about it in my mind, if we're going to have to do the job, Klal Yisrael, with God's help, is going to do the job in Iran. I want to close just with, I can close with 50 things. There's a lot to do. I mean, there are about 300 pages over here. But Rabbi Elio Dessler, Mitzvah Elio, wrote a letter that's awesome. He wrote a letter in the month of 1948, no more than 3 months after the establishment of the state. There were 7 nations battling. They had invaded. The Yishuv here was struggling to stay alive. And Rav Dessler wrote, Masha anu bo achshav be'eretz HaKadosha, what we are, the situation that we are in this holy land. I don't know how to describe it, he says, but one thing is for sure. There are great kindnesses of God. The Jewish situation has changed min hakotzer lakotzer, from one end to the other. From 6 million dead to, he says the word, el kitzei hasheni, the other side, hityashvut amenu b'medinato be'eretz hakadosha. Hityashvut amenu, that our people is settled in his state, Be'eretz HaKadosha. He didn't know whether we would survive it, but he had a great deal of chesed. Can you imagine? 67 years, we're celebrating 67 years. At the establishment of the state, there was someplace between 700,000 to 800,000 Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Fast forward to 2015, there are 6.5 million Jews in this country. This country has, compounded itself 10 times. What would happen if the United States of America, in 67 years, their population would grow 10 times? You know what would happen? America would collapse. No way that America can handle it. No country in the world could handle it. All the social services, food, medicine, no one country, and this country has taken in 10 times its original number in the last 67 years. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. This country has now 3 times more people than they had at the peak period of Bayit Sheni in Eretz Yisrael. The numbers are, you have to grasp the numbers of what's happened here. No other country in the world has ever done this. So our obligation is to thank the Rabbi Shalom. And that's what we're going to do. I say Hallel, and I say Hallel with a bracha, and I say the bracha with great kavanah, and I say Hallel with great kavanah, and then we come to the classic 2 sentences in my mind. This is the day that God has made. We will be full of joy on that day. And at the same moment that we are expressing our great joy, we know that there's grave danger. And therefore we say, Ona Hashem Hoshiana. We need your help. But I go one step further. Do you know who can pray for God's salvation? The one who is ready to stand up and say, if you recognize God's kindness to us, then he's ready to listen when you cry out, Ona Hashem Oshiana. That's what we have to do. And in Yitz Hashem, I have this feeling in my bones that we're going to see big things over here. The Rabbi Shalom is going to bring great Yeshuas and Nechamas to Am Yisrael. You have a tremendous, tremendous opportunity spending a year here in Eretz Yisrael. You have to go back with something. You have to go back with an Avas Eretz Yisrael and Avas Am Yisrael and Avas Torah Yisrael. Thank you.